to justify yourself. He moves from justification in chapter 7. Because having been given all the graces of God, one might think that, well, we should have it made. I mean, come on. And then he raises the issue now of the old man fighting to dispel the appointing and the anointing of the new man. And he argues vehemently that when he would do good, evil always shows up. But then he thanks God that he will have victory through Jesus Christ. He now comes then to chapter 8. And chapter 8 becomes the conclusion of his presentation of the gospel. And where I began reading becomes the conclusion of the conclusion. Because now, before we leave class, he's going to ask us 3 questions. What shall we then say to these things? It is interesting, however, that now we understand the real reason why God has brought us into this world. And that is for those who are the called according to his purpose. His simple reason, complicated, simple, it's simple, but is that we are predestinated to be conformed to the image of his son. Now, I want you to see this very carefully. He is not predestinating you to anything else but being conformed to the image of his son. I dare say now that has to be the single most difficult job for God to do. And that is to make me, you might be closer than I am, but to make me like Jesus. Selah. Can you imagine the enormity of the job to take me, who is so far out, and make me like Jesus? But he has predestinated me to be conformed to the image of his son. Now, obviously, many questions have to bombard us as it relates to our lives, because the things we have found ourselves in, oftentimes without having orchestrated them ourselves, have forced us to deal with things in life that we didn't even bring on ourselves. I don't know if your life is like mine, but I just woke up one day and found that I was a member of a family that I did not choose. I didn't choose my mother, my father. I end up being born in a particular side of town that I did not choose. I was born at a time in a nation, and I did not choose the time I was born. I am very grateful that I was not born in other eras, in other epochs, in other times. I was very grateful to God, but nevertheless, I didn't choose it. How often is it that we have looked for someone to deliver us from what it was that just naturally became our destiny? Because if I did not choose the family I was in, then it was destined that I was born in this particular family. And many times, because we will not deal with the fact that we have come into an unfriendly and foreboding world that's mixed with all kinds of nefarious and evil people that we have no power over, neither did we try in any way or could in any way shape the way they even felt about us. And yet still we have had to deal with those things that we did not bring on ourselves. I can almost hear a rat licking ice. It's going to get rough for a minute. We were born in many instances to families in our helplessness, and we had to deal with abusive fathers, and many of us had to deal with abusive relatives and had to endure some abuse that we should never have endured, but we didn't have the power in any way to make it any different. I don't care how naked my 5-year-old or 6-year-old daughter gets, I'm still her father. And she can never be blamed for my behavior because she is innocent and doesn't have the capacity to change me or cause me to be anything other than what I should be. But so many of us have been raised in families that we were abused sexually, mistreated physically, debilitated psychologically, and yet still we had no power to change it. And it was our destiny. Cold, uncaring mothers who spent more time on drugs than she did fixing a bottle for her children. And yet still the child has to come through and live through that kind of environment that they didn't choose to have and didn't orchestrate or didn't put together. And it leaves many times an indelible print on the the immaterial personality of that individual, and for years to come that individual has to overcome the stigma and the pain of things that they did not bring on themselves. And if that is so, then that is their destiny. You've got prejudicial teachers, mean people in general, and to mix that with poverty and failure to be educated at the right time because you ended up in a situation without any guidance. A destiny we had no choice in. I mean, it was simply handed to us. And for so long, we seek to cover our backgrounds. We seek to hide our backgrounds. And if we don't try to hide them, we seek to compensate for it. And sometimes we try consciously to deny that it even existed. And we do anything to face directly dealing with certain aspects of our childhood. I'm talking to somebody. This, for the most part, then turns and brings us into intense resentment. And we end up now hating certain people and despising certain people. And it's not with a clean, clear heart that we go to a family reunion